So, what is your definition of the automation operations market?
So this is something that is typically not well understood by most of the people, and we probably want to spend a little bit of time to articulate here what it is and how important, right? So first of all, when you do automation, people consider that this is a project where they start and then they finish and then they are done. Actually, when you do automation, you introduce a digital workforce inside your organization, and therefore you need to start managing that workforce. So you now have software robots that are digital employees, and you train them to do stuff. And obviously the environment is evolving, the tools are changing, the processes are changing. There's always something changing in an organization, and therefore the need to maintain and even optimize your software robots is absolutely critical. So my definition of the automation operation, there's different ways to call this, but it is the operational side of the automation, which consists of making sure that the same way you are taking care of your human employee and you are managing them, you are training them, you are making sure they show up at work, you need to manage and train and optimize your digital workforce. So that's the automation operation market, according to me.
Great. I mean, for a regular employee, you would have human resources. So this sounds like a call for something I would call robotic resources, right?
Exactly. You have HR, you have managers, you have trainers, you have a whole bunch of support system around you as an employee, as a human employee. And we need to consider that, obviously, since we are running operation now with software robots, we need to support those software robots the same way. Indeed.
What are the biggest roadblocks on the intelligent automation journey that you see?
Yeah, I see two main roadblocks, and they are typically not where people consider that they should be, right? So obviously people are going to jump on, finding the right tools, the right cost for the tools, building correctly, deploying correctly, testing correctly. Of course, this is important. But for me, there's two main roadblocks. One that is well understood by the market now, that sits upstream of building bots, and it's understanding the environment and discovering what needs to be built. That's covered by task mining, process mining. That's the whole discovery space, as people call it. And then the other space that is less understood is downstream of building robots, and it's related to not being able to correctly support your bot, right? So obviously, if you build automation, you have in mind productivity gains, you have in mind quality improvements, you have in mind removing error rate, you have in mind offloading your human teams, and you build bots that are capable of doing that. And what we see happening is, because those bots are not correctly maintained, we see a leakage in the return on investment, meaning that the capability of the bot is shrinking over time as the environment is changing. The bot is less and less capable to automate. The overall automation rate of that bot is dropping, right? So this is a huge roadblock where we see organization after a while considering that the bot is not really capable of doing the job. And this is mostly related to the fact that they did not take care of the bot correctly. They underestimated the run and maintenance, activity related to taking care of the bots. Absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, with that secondary effects of scaling the automation.
Exactly. And obviously, the more bots you deploy, the more impact you're going to have if you don't take care of your footprint, if you don't manage your footprint, if you don't support your footprint, and if you don't optimize your footprint, right? Because again, the opposite effect here is, instead of letting your bot get weaker, you can, iterate and get your bot stronger and stronger by understanding how to optimize it and understanding how to make it, better, faster, cheaper at the end of the day.
How can companies stay ahead of the curve when it comes to the maintenance of automated processes?
Yeah. So once the company understand the criticality of correctly supporting, maintaining, and running the digital footprint that they have created, there's obviously a number of ways to do that, right? And typically what we see happening is that there's software vendors that are starting to specialize in this operation, this run and maintain activity. Why? Because while the RPA vendors, if I take RPA as an example, are typically going to provide you with enough capability to understand what's happening with the robots. Very often we end up being nowadays in very complex situation where we have also multi-vendor situations, right? So when your ecosystem, think about it, is starting to become rich because you have a lot of robots, it's also starting to become complex. And when you have multiple bots built from multiple technologies, multiple versions of those technologies, when the documentation is not always perfect, because we know it's not always perfect, you need to start looking at multi-vendor capability, and there's out there solutions that are allowing you to keep track of what's happening across your multi-vendor bot footprint, and being able to understand what those bots are doing, detect when something is wrong, and optimize those robots by really understanding what step to take to make those bots better.
What are some of the biggest challenges that companies face when it comes to scaling the RPA?
Yes. So if you look at RPA tools, no matter what the tool we talk about here, you're going to have a challenge with the input and the output of the tool. So the input, and this is a typical well-known situation where you are failing to provide enough pipeline of IDs and opportunities to keep feeding the engine, to keep building bots. And this is something that people now start to understand very well. And there's a lot of capabilities out there to allow you to, look at the data and understand where and what to do and how to automate. As an output, you also need to manage that. So by output, I mean, robots now are starting to do work, they deliver outcome, they do work so human can do something else more human-like. And if you don't manage, the quality of that output, you are going to have some difficulty to scale. So practically, if you have 5-10 robots doing ABC, and for some reason those robots over time are failing to deliver the right level of quality, they are failing because everything around them is changing, and therefore the users that are receiving the impact, the outcome of those robots are starting to complain. Typically what's going to happen is that you are going to lose momentum in your automation initiative, right? So the satisfaction of the user that are receiving the outcome of the robot is absolutely critical. So the point being here is, if you want to keep scaling, you gotta one side keep feeding your automation engine with proper IDs that are impactful, and on the other side you gotta maintain the quality of the outcome that you have designed with your bots, right? If you don't do that, people are going to consider that the bots are not doing a good job. They are going to start complaining that the bots are actually creating more problems than what they are solving. And therefore, you are going to see, an impact in your automation initiative. You are going to start getting some pushback, not because people don't want bots, but because people are rightfully going to highlight that the bots are not doing a good job. So it is absolutely critical that you have the right measure in place for ensuring that your input, your pipeline is of high quality, and at the same time ensuring that the quality of the output coming from the bot stays at the right level.
Absolutely. I mean, keeping everything tuned up so it performs as expected it's one of the crucial pain points. And
exactly, and the worst you want here is either a bunch of licenses with no robots because you don't have a pipeline, or a bunch of robots that are using a license but are not doing a good job because they are not correctly managed and optimized, and therefore end user, clients, employees not very happy with the job the bots are doing.
Why is it so important to think ahead when you start with the automation in your organization?
So this is obviously a big disruption to a company when they start relying on digital employees, on software robots. And of course, initially, you typically want to start small because you don't understand the technology, you want to trust the technology, you want to manage the risk. So you start small, and you start small, I would say, quick and dirty, and then you start scaling here. And obviously, if you don't have the foundation of your house, well built, then your house is going to be shaky, right? So what's really important is for people to really project in the future that the digital workforce is here to stay, is here to grow. People are saying that, for every employee in the company, they will have a digital twin. So we are going to have large footprints of software robots, and the foundation needs to be there. The way you build robots, the standard that you utilize to build robots, the way you document robots, the way you support robots is absolutely critical if you want to be able to scale, right? If you don't do that, you will quickly hit a point where you're going to have more problems to deal with than value that you get from the bots, right? So understanding that this is very long-term, although you start small, you're not going to stop, you're not going to go back, you're not going to have less automation, you're not going to have less AI, you're going to get more and more, and you just want the foundation of your house to be really well built, right? So think big here, and don't allow this, POC/quick and dirty approach to become the standard that you're going to be using for scaling, because you're going to fail.
Excellent. And the follow-up question will be like, do you see that this is actually happening with companies that are just starting with the automation? Or are they going into the old way of POC, quick and dirty?
So what we see happening is that people are typically taking the quick and dirty approach. Unfortunately, they want to test out a full number of reasons. Sometimes it's valid reasons, sometimes it's not so valid reasons, but we see a large amount of clients actually starting small and then suffering when they start scaling, or sometimes not being able to scale because of the lack of foundation, the lack of structure that they have in their environment, right? So unfortunately, this is happening a lot, right? We know that there's very few companies in the world that have large footprint of automation bots. Most of the time, you're going to have 1 to 5 to maybe 10 bots running. So it's still not, largely at scale. And unfortunately, the governance, the framework, including, discovery framework and support framework, is very often not entirely there. So yes, unfortunately, we see that happening a lot.
What to do when more and more team members from your automation team need to maintain the processes that are in production instead of developing a new one?
Yes. So this is the very infamous 80-20 rule, right? We know that in any, so this is not just for automation, in any technical environment, over time, we end up, when you look at a budget, we end up spending about 80% of the budget to maintain what we have built, to maintain the legacy, to support the legacy. And we only have 20% of the budget left to do innovation. This is, very, very well known by CIOs, and it's a huge headache, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the same applies to the automation space. And when you start building a COEs, at the beginning, everyone is super excited to build bots, and then you end up, in the same situation where you have more and more of your team member starting to be dedicated to support, starting to basically make sure that the bots are running, make sure that, the clients are happy with the existing automation footprint, and very, very few of those people, can dedicate time to build new bots and to basically grow the footprint, right? So there's a number of things here that needs to be done, starting with how well you build your bot, how much standard you include in your bot, and then how much structure and how much of a framework you are putting in place to ensure the supportability of your bot, right? Because at the end of the day, you ask 20 developers to develop the same bot, they will have, using the same tool, they will have 20 different ways of doing it. And obviously with attrition happening and, sometimes weak documentation, it becomes, time consuming to support the bots, right? So it's really, really critical here to understand that automation is no different from any other technology environment, and the 80-20 rule will apply. And the more you can get prepared for that situation, the more you can have a framework, the more you can use, the right approach, the right tools to do proper support. The more you can automate the support at the end of the day, the better you're going to be off, and the more, innovation bandwidth you are going to protect.
Definitely. And, given the big dependency of RPA on the application interface and the interface that the human would use, do you think that this is a technology, that a long-term solution to automate process, or is it like something intermediary that will be
so I understand the question, and I'm not going to comment on whether RPA is good or bad, and there's a lot of people that are quite strong about that. All I have to say is that the environment is evolving a lot, and the way you integrate with the environment is going to impact the reliability of your product. We know, and I'm not, I'm stating the obvious here, that if you can use an API instead of, screen scrapping a UI, you're going to be way more reliable, and you're going to have way less issue. I mean, of course, this is not the only support issue that we see with the bot. There's the quality of the data. I mean, there's a number of things, but obviously, the less reliable the integration option is, the less reliable the bot will be, the more support you're going to have to do. That's obvious.
Absolutely. And well, do you see any opportunities, let's say now with all the generative AI that can help the teams to better maintain or build better solutions that will actually require less maintenance?
Definitely. So we see more and more people, first of all, using the more reliable way to integrate into the environment, to interact with the environment. We see more and more focus on the quality of the data that is used as an input. This is very this is probably the most important. And then obviously we cannot ignore the wave of disruption that is coming from the large language model engine, things like ChatGPT, and obviously their capability to adapt to changing and morphing data is quite impressive. So of course, the market is going to evolve here. But having said that, this is not going to remove the 80-20, rule / headache that we see all the time, which is if you don't do it right, you spend your life supporting it.
What are some of the best practices for maintaining an RPA system and ensuring that there is actually long-term success of the automation?
Yes. So what I think here is that very often we are lacking standards. We are lacking proper documentation. We are lacking proper leverage across the bots. And this has a direct impact on the supportability of the automation footprint that you are building. So what is really important here is to be able to control what the developers are doing by establishing some standard and understanding the nature of the code that they are developing so that you can boost the supportability of the bots. Very often what we see is that you have multiple teams, sometimes external teams, external consultant, multiple service company, internal teams. There's of course attrition. So this guy developed and then he left, and there's another guy picking up. He has a different development style, and then you end up having a bit of a mess here, simply because you did not establish from the beginning the right framework. So of course you are always going to have different people, you are always going to have different technology, but the more you can establish a framework here to standardize what you develop, the easier it will be to support. And on the support side, on the operational side, there's automation maintenance, automation ops tools that are capable to look at the code and identify where you have optimization, right? So again, I think that there's always improvement to be made around how you build, how you govern. And I would say the biggest areas of opportunity is to go towards standardization of the bots, standardization, leveraging the same modules, having, a lot of guidelines so that you have as much as possible consistency across your footprint. So that when you change developers, when you change teams, when you change bots, the effort to switch context from bot A to bot B is minimum. So that's definitely something that I don't see a lot happening. And what we see happening is typically, at the moment, a lot of bots that are not very consistent when you compare one to the other, and obviously a lot more difficult to support.
Could you tell me, what do you think, what is the future of automation operations in general?
So what we are going to see moving forward, as I said multiple times, is an increased focus on running, maintaining, supporting, optimizing your automation footprint. And one thing that is going to be quite obvious, and we've seen that in many other areas of technology, is that being reactive is not going to be enough. So it's great that you can react fast to a failing bot, that you can fix it fast. But what we are going to expect, is that, especially for business critical robots, is that we become more and more proactive when it comes to maintaining, supporting, running the environment. So the winner will probably be the providers, the software providers that can proactively monitor, proactively manage, proactively support, proactively optimize the digital footprint, the automation footprint, the software robots. It is totally possible nowadays to connect and understand what the robot is doing, analyze what the robot is doing, identify weaknesses, identify optimization areas, and if there is a point of failure, try to resolve it, try to improve the bot itself before it fails, right? So the proactivity to ensure that there's as little downtime as possible for those critical bots that are going to be running a chunk of the business is absolutely key moving forward. So wait, let me stop the recording, make sure it works. Otherwise, I will kill myself.